Hello and welcome back to another edition of the GSMC College Football Podcast, presented to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Today is Wednesday, May 28th. Hope everybody's had a good week so far. Middle of the week, we're going to keep it going though. Got a good show for you today. First, we're going to touch on SEC meetings. SEC as a whole is meeting this week. Coaches, administrators, officials, the whole deal, the whole gang is there down in Florida. We're going to talk about some of what has been the topics of conversation, get into that. We're also going to touch on 2026 recruits that have not committed anywhere, where they could potentially end up, look at some of those landing spots. We're also going to look at 2027 guys and prospects, give some comparisons to current college football players so that we can kind of start to get an understanding of who these next round of superstars are. And then we're going to finish off by talking Big Ten rankings. We're going to continue on. We got the upper middle tier, I guess, today, about teams 4 through 6. We're getting close to the end. We're getting close to the good ones. We're going to touch on all that. But first, before I get into anything, I want to remind everybody that this show is all about you. We love hearing your comments, your questions, your insights, your opinions, your hot takes, whatever you got. We want to hear it. We want to make this show as interactive, as exciting as possible. Now, one easy way to do that, if you're on YouTube, you can use the Super Chat feature. To use the Super Chat feature, all you have to do is click the $ at the bottom of the chat box, type in your message there, send that in. This guarantees that your message gets on the air, gets read live, and it's also just a great way to support our channel, support what we're trying to build here at GSMC. We couldn't do what we do without your ongoing support, and we're so grateful to have you all here as a part of our community. And if Super Chat's not your thing, if you're not on YouTube, you can also go to gsmcspodcast.net to comment there, tip, donate. Again, that link is gsmcpodcast.net. Now, let's dive into some SEC talk. There's been a lot. What we've kind of learned so far is, first off, with the portal, pretty much everybody wants something different. So let's start with the good, though. Everyone kind of seems to recognize that 2 transfer portal windows are unnecessary in college football in that offseason. So, at the minimum, that gives us a good start, right? Okay. Everybody kind of agrees that 2 windows is not right. Where things get a little more interesting is kind of in the logistics of that. So in January at the American Football Coaches Association, I didn't even know that was a thing, honestly, but at their convention in Charlotte in January, coaches presented a proposal for a single portal window in January. Only problem, the decision makers might not agree with them. So SEC coaches, again, this week backed the AFCA proposal and have kind of unanimously decided that they only want 1 portal window in January. The only problem, they're not the ones making the decision, right? That ruling is going to be made by a group of Power Conference athletic directors in the House Implementation Committee. Yes, another committee ruling on a different part of college football. That's kind of just where we're at right now. At the Big Ten spring meetings earlier, those coaches kind of supported 1 spring window from March to April for the portal. So some administrators kind of want the single window to occur in May once spring semesters finish. The yearly clock for revenue sharing kind of resets each season then to conceivably kind of make meeting payroll easier. Again, complicated like everything else. SEC coaches kind of seem to want to have it in January. Other places kind of want it more so maybe in April or May. So where we're going to go with that, that's going to be another kind of interesting facet, is will the portal go down to 1 window? It kind of seems like everybody wants that. But is it going to be in January? Is it going to be in May? We're not really sure. Another thing, the SEC, not super happy with the College Football Playoff Selection Committee at the moment. Folks around the league are really, really upset with kind of how the 12-team playoff shook out last year, how the selection committee kind of picked some of those teams in Indiana, SMU over perhaps Alabama, Ole Miss, South Carolina. This has kind of obviously led to the push to the 16-team playoff, which we might see in 2026. We're still not sure about that. And again, with the playoff, this is all in the air too. So Greg Sankey presented multiple models to coaches during meetings on yesterday. Coaches seem to favor the 5 and 11 model that would give the 4 power conference champions and the highest ranked group of 5 champion 5 automatic bids, and then the 11 other bids would be picked by the selection committee. However, the SEC administration is not on board with this one. Coaches seem to kind of like that 5 and 11 model. The administration does not. Florida Athletic Director Scott Strickland, in particular, he was of the opinion that you should outright eliminate the selection committee completely. He was quoted by saying, "A committee is not ideal to choose a postseason." And then the end of that quote was, "I question whether it is appropriate for college football." Okay. All right, Scott Strickland. I don't know. I think kind of the whole point of the committee was getting away from the computer-based rankings in the BCS, right? Everybody complained about those models, how it wasn't kind of reflecting the on-field product. Okay, who are you going to have pick then, I guess? How are they going to have people determine who's in this college football playoff? The 5-11 proposal was something proposed by the ACC and the Big 12, kind of in rebuttal to the reported 4-4-2-2-1 model that the SEC Big Ten kind of jointly proposed, more so the Big Ten and Tony Petitti there. That format would guarantee multi-team access for every power conference and also creates potential additional revenue in the form of play-in games. So if we were to go to that 4-4-2-2-1 model in which the SEC and Big Ten would each get 4 automatic bids, the ACC and the Big 12 would each get 2 automatic bids, and then there'd be kind of that 1 automatic bid that's pretty much earmarked for Notre Dame, but the highest ranked kind of independent, then our group of 5 champion would also get a bid. So the play-in games would be kind of interesting here. The way those would work, they would take place on championship weekend instead of just the top 2 teams in, say, the SEC or the Big 10 competing for the conference championship. There would be 3 matchups that day. The number 3 and 4 teams in the Big 10 and SEC would host the number 6 and number 5 teams, respectively. And then there would also be the neutral site championship matchups in Indianapolis and Atlanta, and which would be the number 1, number 2 teams in the conference. So the championship game participants would both get 2 of those 4 bids guaranteed, and then the winner of the 2 play-in games would also get the 2 of the other 4 bids. It's something that the Big Ten and the SEC can sell to ESPN, Fox, CBS, whoever, to kind of gain more television revenue, right? If you add 2 more marquee matchups on championship weekend, that's a big deal, and that's a lot of potential revenue in terms of TV money. Adding more cash, it's kind of just a top goal for pretty much every university since their budget sheet has changed drastically, with revenue sharing scheduled to be coming in July. Programs, colleges, universities are kind of having to work around that and say, okay, where can we maybe get additional streams of revenue? Having 2 more high impact, almost playoff type matchups for the SEC and the Big Ten, that would be huge and would bring in, I don't even know how many millions of dollars that would be projected to bring in right now, but something to just keep adding to that bottom line of how are we going to make the most money. Another separation that's kind of occurring is right there, just with that, are we going to do the 5 bids and the 11 kind of committee selections? Are we going to go to the more 13 guaranteed spots in the playoff. Then another thing here too is the talking of moving to a 9-game conference schedule for the SEC. This is something that's been discussed the past few years. However, it really kind of sounds like it's only likely to happen if the SEC gets automatic bids. So if they do go to that model where they have 4 guaranteed bids every single year, then the SEC is a little more likely to move to a 9-game conference schedule. That guaranteed access they kind of view right now as needed, as coaches still apparently sounds like they prefer that 8-game model. Just makes more sense for their programs, as opposed to adding an additional SEC game to have to go through another week of really tough conference play. Coaches would rather have the 8-game slate. It just kind of makes the rest of their season easier, more manageable. And when you're looking at historical data, though, of how bids would have worked in the past, the SEC should really like this kind of model. Outside of the lost revenue of an additional extra game and a revamped championship Saturday, outside of that, just looking at the historical data, getting 4 automatic bids every year when we're not sure, we're not going to be able to predict the future. We don't know what the SEC is going to look like in 2027 or 28. Could they only have 2 teams that are maybe top 16? It's very possible. It doesn't seem likely, but it's very possible. So having 4 guaranteed bids every year, that's a really big bonus. Just knowing that every single season you're going to at least have 4 teams in the playoff. It makes a lot of sense. But another thing to look at is what happens if they go with that route and they keep an 8-game conference schedule. Could we potentially lose some of these secondary rivalries like Texas A&M, Alabama, Tennessee? Could those potentially be lost if they continue with an 8-game model down the road in the near future? I don't know. We'll see. Greg Sankey said that there's models in place right now to kind of protect those secondary rivalries in the SEC, but that's something where I don't know if they can actually finally do that. It's going to be interesting. So the administrators want 9 games, coaches want 8. It's ultimately probably going to come down to what the Power Conference commissioners decide when they meet again on the college football playoff. That's kind of the memorandum of understanding right now. However, it's kind of worth noting that the SEC coaches seem to kind of favor the ACC Big 12 proposal right now over the Big 10 proposal. It sounds messy, and it is. This is really a lot to work through right now. There's a lot going on that kind of seems all up in the air. We don't know anything for sure. We don't know what's actually going to happen. Another kind of thing to look at is everyone pretty much seemed to acknowledge that there's going to be some more help from Congress needed at some point. Yes, the settlement should help, but once it comes down, there's going to have to be some more federal guidelines. It kind of sounds like that's the opinion of pretty much everybody around the SEC. They're kind of just waiting for that. That means more going to Capitol Hill, more lobbying, more kind of putting their point of views out there. We're going to see what kind of happens. The settlement's obviously kind of a step in the right direction, but it kind of sounds like everybody is seeming to acknowledge that more assistance will be needed down the line. So right now, we're going to take our first break of the show. When we come back, we're going to switch gears. We're going to talk about some young bucks and some 2027 prospects and kind of who they remind me of in terms of current college football players. So we're going to dive into all of that when we come back on the GSMC College Football Podcast.